Afro Svengalis. I'm going to go over the legal update, and I'm going to start with the least relevant, the least important, the least amount of time I'm going to spend is on this federal lawsuit. There are people out there who've actually told me how badly they want me to suffer and go penniless over a silly lawsuit. And let me tell you, the person is so upset that I called the lawsuit silly that she went and told the judge. Are you getting the speed at which this is operating? When did I ever speak this person's name before? Nothing's changed. I'm not speaking it now. The person is so desperate, wanting everybody to cover this silly ass lawsuit. Well, what somebody wants has nothing to do with what they're going to get, especially when it comes to the silly ass frivolous lawsuit. This person filed the lawsuit in October, and since October is trying to insert quotes and commentary that I'm giving on this channel. So what? They can quote what I say on this channel. Nothing has changed. But it's absolutely telling how the person is trying to ex post facto build a case. It's not worth covering at this point. And I think I told you someone has already garnered a dismissal. I'll keep you posted when the judge rules. Now on to things that are more relevant here. Star Snake went on someone's channel, I think it was Phonyton's channel, whining about binary Castaway, how she hasn't heard from him. And it's been, I don't know, I think she said 2 weeks and not returning phone calls. He starts to cry and whine about people have been calling his job recently and how his personal life has been affected, especially since people were calling him a predator and on and on. Okay, swan song, right? I'm going to tell you my response to this. What binary Castaway did is what he did. Whatever situation he's in, I have absolutely, obviously, no idea what's going on. But let's say what Star Snake is saying is true, that there are repercussions, personally and professionally, based on people, she says, calling his job. This is what she's saying. Well, if that's the case, that's the case. Binary Castaway is a public servant who came over into this space and these YouTube streets, these particular YouTube blocks, and thought he had it made in the shade. He had an audience, he had targets, he had people he focused on to harass, thought he can intimidate and keep in silence and attack them based on race, attack them based on gender, sexual orientation, and religion. The list goes on. Every protected class issue you can imagine, binary Castaway went for it. He sat on those attack panels where women and children were attacked. Now, here's what I want to make very clear. If this is happening to binary Castaway, that means he will never again, and that's actually been the case for a while now, experience the comfort and the joy and the relishing and the bravado that he felt when he conducted himself in the most inhumane of all manners, when he attacked Black people, the sick and disgusting manner in which he characterized us as a people. And I don't give a damn whether or not you agree with me out there, like these people. I could care less. I'm giving you my context. No one should ever feel comfortable doing what he did. So if there's a discomfort level, good. That is actually a victory. Nobody should ever feel comfortable doing the things that binary Castaway did. And it is a victory if he no longer feels that comfort, which we know he doesn't, because the behavior indicates that. Deleting his videos, deleting the channel. Yeah, you need to be very uncomfortable based on the things that you were doing. You brought it on yourself. If this is indeed going on, if somebody wants to feel sorry for binary Castaway, they can. I have absolutely no sympathy for anybody, in particular a public servant, who engages in the conduct that he engaged in. Now, people can debate all they want to debate about whether he's a predator or not. People are entitled to their opinions. It's not a dry opinion. I will tell you one thing for damn sure, the conduct is indeed predatory. I am not going through an assessment process with Binary Castaway, but I know I was on the receiving end of his predatory behavior. That much I will say. I don't have to remind people who are willing and able to see what happened. He engaged in the same conduct towards many people in these particular YouTube blocks. So, however anyone else feels about it, it's how they feel about it. And I want to add something else, a very important piece of information. During this whole debate about binary castaway and children and all this stuff, I was hearing a lot of different things. And obviously, among one of the videos that I started and didn't finish was Binary Castaway telling the story about how he touched these women at a house, whatever the situation is. It doesn't even matter. What I want to tell you is this. One of the things that kept coming up was it doesn't matter anyway because it was 20 years ago and no charges can be filed. Here's some information for you people. This has to do with how it started out with adults abused and molested as children. By the time they became of age, there was no recourse because the statute of limitations expired. Over the last 15 years, essentially laws in every state have changed. There are some states that don't even have statute of limitations. If a person has evidence of something occurring, they can file with the police. And if the police determine there is potential merit, then they will take the case. Those laws gradually shifted towards adult to adult criminal activity of a sexual nature. We already know that murder has no statute of limitations, but I'm speaking specifically about potential crimes involving sex-related matters. So you have in essentially every state a changing of how the clock ticks with respect to the statute of limitations. Now let's talk about Arizona. Let's say Binary Castaway was up there telling his whatever he was saying, the very disgusting, smug, I got away with it, ha ha ha, I'm big man on campus, whatever you want to call it. I'm the man doing these things to women and I had the control attitude. Let's say one of these women heard him talking, just happened to see the video, because you don't know who's looking at what. Say this person went to the police department in Phoenix or wherever it was and filed a report. Do you think that the woman would have a different story than Binary Castaway? Or will those stories match up? I mean, it's a rhetorical question. So let me tell you what would happen if this scenario played out. Once a suspect is identified, that's the count for the statute of limitations. Murder has no statute of limitations. Although we're not talking about murder, Arizona also adds violent sexual assault. That has no statute of limitations. Other crimes that are potentially eligible have a 7-year statute of limitations, but the clock doesn't start ticking until a suspect is identified. Now, a suspect doesn't mean the person did it. This is someone who was being accused. So no more do you have this, it happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. If there is an identified suspect and there is evidence, and you all would be surprised at the evidence people leave when it comes to these types of situations. People write letters and give them to victims. People go up on the internet and record themselves, brazen, feeling nothing can touch them. If a person knew there was a statute of limitations that didn't start counting until the suspect is identified, I guarantee you that video would not have been posted. Now, we all know these are what ifs. Many of you were engaging what ifs. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but it is very unwise for anybody to get up on social media. We've seen people and make any sort of declaration such as Binary Castaway did. I mean, people, I don't even need to tell you how bad that looked. I don't care how many excuses people want to run. It was foul. It was disgusting. And this is a public servant. You mean to tell me you have a child being taught by this individual, you would be happy and applauding it? Let's make it very clear. I'm just as entitled to my opinion as Binary Castaway was when he got up there and recorded that ridiculous, disgusting, vile, reprehensible video. So people want to tell you you cannot have a response to something you consider offensive, but leave Binary Castaway in peace as he rails off whatever atrocities he wants to rail off. And he took pleasure in humiliating and degrading our people. You can have whatever freaking opinion you want. This is my opinion. It is disgusting that anybody thinks they can get up here and identify a specific race thinking because they're so vulnerable and they have this relationship with the system that isn't very positive, that they're going to pile upon that by engaging in the conduct that Binary Castaway engaged in. Same with Umar Johnson, same with a lot of folks out there. More and more people are speaking up, and it needs to be stated, don't take refuge in abusing black folks just because you think that history is solidified that people won't stand up and defend themselves, because many of us will. And if law enforcement so decides, it will move forward and be investigated and refer it to the DA. That's up to law enforcement. Yeah, I'm being very specific about this because that was one of the things that I heard in these YouTube streets that was the most disturbing, because it represents people are not well read. You should know the statutes in your own state in general. I don't believe anything Binary Castaway says, but I will tell you this much. Everybody has unguarded moments, and he got so used to abusing our people, attacking our people, harassing our people, he didn't think anything could be done to him. And it's a rude awakening, but that is his rude awakening. I am imploring all of you out there, don't for a second think you have to shoulder guilt because of someone else's irresponsible, vile, racist, misogynistic, and blasphemous conduct. That's the trick to make you feel guilty. What about his Binary's wife and kids? What about Rev G's wife and kids? What about Lyndon Honor's wife and kids? I can go on. A lot of people who Binary Castaway attacked have wife and children. All of us have family members. What about our relatives? So they expect you to garner sympathy for someone who's attacking you. That's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. And that's what Let Me See Your Handcuffs try to pull on us. I'm going to deal with her next. You don't feel guilty for what someone did to you. The person decided to conduct themselves in the manner that they conduct themselves. It is their responsibility to live with those consequences if they're so forthcoming. Too damn bad. A friend should have influence on a friend when it comes to their conduct. You can't dictate to anyone what anyone thinks about what they saw and heard straight from Binary Castaway. This is like this person, this Garfield person out of the clear blue sky says Rev G is a child molester. Now there's an action. There is a lawsuit. There is a case. There is no case with Binary Castaway when he stands up here and describes behavior that's clearly predatory. Again, pray nobody comes forward and challenges his version. Pray this actually didn't happen. Well, if it does happen, that's something he's going to have to deal with. I'm not going to concern myself because Binary Castaway stood up and told a quote story and he didn't like the outcome and how people responded to it. That is his problem. Now on to Let Me See Your Handcuffs. It will be covered in part 2. So don't touch that dial and be sure to always heed the warning. Buyer beware.